Hello, welcome back to my fave fanfics. Here, I post, well, my favorite fanfictions, if that wasn't obvious. I do hope you'll enjoy them as much as I do. Please like and subscribe for more content. Without further ado, let's get started.
Welcome, my dear faves, to the 6th part of What If Ichigo and His Family Transported to the World of My Hero Academia. Credit goes to DuchessEglantine. Chapter 33. The Fall of a Hero. Goodbye Granny Letty. The Kurisaki's chorused as she left with her bags, and a little hat adorned with feathers and beads. She would be leaving to live with her sister in the countryside. Orihime had promised that she would make Letty's chocolates for Sundays and have the boys distribute them. Now don't you go changing things. Those folks may have been abandoned by their families, but that doesn't mean they don't have particular tastes. Letty had said firmly with a shake of her cane. Orihime nodded and had given her a hug goodbye. Ichigo had let Kazui and Lemillion escort her to the train station on their own. He went back into the house and walked to the back sliding patio door. The backyard was filled with bright red corpses, of the dummies Ichigo had bought in bulk, and he sighed as he observed one that was leaking vermilion all over his stepping stone pathway. "That's going to be a pain to get out," he mumbled under his breath as he started cleanup. Lemillion would be acting as a sidekick today and treating Kazui as an intern. Tugata had actually teared up that morning at breakfast when Ichigo had told him so, like Ichigo had trusted his firstborn to him or something. Ichigo paused while shoving a dummy into an oversized sack. "Huh," Ichigo looked up at the sun shining through the leaves of the tree. "I suppose I did," he thought. Several monitors flickered while two security guards stared blankly ahead. Black sludge spewed out of Himiko Toga's mouth and she disappeared. Minutes later she was back in her cell, sound asleep. The monitors flickered again and the guard's eyes filled with life once more. One yawned. "Nothing interesting ever happens on this shift," he grumbled with a chin in his palm. His coworker threw a paperclip at him. "Don't jinx it," he hissed. The first guard rolled his eyes and leaned back in his chair. Dabi sat in a straitjacket, hyper-aware of every nerve ending in his body. Each time the air from the ventilation system danced through his hair, each time his breath came from his nose to tickle his upper lip. The texture of the straitjacket, the swelling of his sinuses from weeping too long, and the trickle of tears down his face. The spasming of his muscles as he trembled. His father had come, they'd done a DNA test. It was bullshit, all of it. Endeavor, no, Enji had looked at him with an expression so disgustingly open and wrecked that Tuya wanted to burn his damn face off. Dabi had taunted him, mocked him, threatened everything he loved. Spoke with a wicked grin and feverish eyes about how he'd intended to watch Enji hold little Shoto's body in his arms when he'd attacked that summer camp with the others. Watched as his father's face crumbled and he had to be led away, listless, by the guards of Tartarus. "I looked for you. ... everywhere." All it took were whispered words from a weak man and sensation in his fingertips, and "I believed you were alive." Tears, those damn tears. He'd gotten what he wanted, hadn't he? Endeavor, brought low, his heart torn out, defeated. Tuya, Dabi, who even was he now? Question mark. He trembled and the material of the clothes he was wearing itched like a festering wound under his skin. Tear tracks felt like ice where the breeze from a vent chilled them. He should be happy. He hadn't gotten to wreck little Shoto like he planned, But the expression he would have gotten wouldn't have been much better than the one he already got from Enji. He should be happy. He trembled with rage and spoke of dark promises with a smooth voice from a throat that was soothingly damp and whole. It's bullshit. Dabi swore. No one should have the power to erase the past, like it never even happened. His breath was quick and he didn't bother blinking. His tears kept his eyes moist enough. He was whole, made new again, as though the pain he'd suffered was nothing but a bad dream. His thoughts were clear and his head didn't feel stuffy anymore. How dare she? Question mark. He whispered harshly into the silence, eyes wide and a wild smile stretching from ear to ear. Who gave her the right? Question mark. He snarled. Everything felt wrong. Enji sat on the edge of the couch, holding a picture in his hands. He felt numb, like his ambition had single-handedly destroyed everything he held dear. You should take some time, they'd said. Though he couldn't remember who. Tuya's face, now a man, with that single streak of white peppering his red hair like so long ago, haunted his memory and overshadowed all else. The picture stared back at him, cheerful, beloved. I'm home, Natsuo said as he came through the front door. Enji listened as though from a distance as his son removed his shoes and rustled about by the front door. His footsteps sounded like warhammers along the tatami mats. Silence. Enji did not remove his gaze from the picture. A low buzzing had started in his ears back in Tartarus and hadn't died down. He felt listless, as though viewing everything from the viewing glass of an aquarium. TCH. Natsuo walked past him where he sat on the living room couch. Time passed and the room dimmed as the sun set and night descended. His children all avoided him, and he felt suddenly as though it were entirely deserved. I wanted to watch you hold your little masterpiece in your arms and know that everything you've done has led to this. Tuya's eyes, wide and fever bright, alight with madness and unholy glee as he imparted his dark fantasies to Enji. Maybe even Natsuo and Fuyumi once I gave you enough time to get over little Shoto. I would have ripped him apart with my bare hands, burned him up from the inside. A sick twisted expression contorted his face, and Enji felt ill at how similar his and Tuya's voices sounded now that he was a man. The buzzing had started then, and Enji felt cold and numb. The rest of what had been said were the detailed fantasies of a serial killer. He stared at the smiling face of Tuya and clear droplets fell onto the glass covering. Time passed and the room lightened as the sunrise passed and morning bloomed bright and brilliant for Japan. The buzzing never stopped. Dad? Fuyumi asked from the doorway, did you go to sleep? He didn't answer and she walked over to sit beside him. Enji rallied his nerves while Fuyumi sat uncomfortably beside him. He's alive, Enji choked out. He wasn't able to rally enough. Who? Fuyumi asked with a worried frown and a tilt of her head. A choked sob ripped from his throat and Fuyumi stared at him with wide eyes and looked down at the picture in his hand. He tried to kill Shoto, Enji said with a trembling arm as he handed her the picture. She took it and a look of horror crossed her face. Dad, who? Question mark. She demanded as she stood up and shouted in his face, demanding that he clarify who he meant. The buzzing got louder and he stared blankly at her, the name caught in his throat. He couldn't. Everything was numb, he felt as cold as ice. Time passed, and the world moved on, as though nothing had happened at all. All for one downed the vial of blood and allowed Miss Toga's quirk to take effect. His body morphed and changed to be that of a middle-aged man with crow's feet and salt and pepper hair. He pulled the quirk away from his missing arm and it sloshed away, leaving half of an arm behind. His yellow plaid sleeve flapped loosely through the air when he moved. "You look excellent, master," Garaki said as he adjusted a red bow tie around All for One's neck. He looked like a friendly neighborhood grandfather, with suspenders and a bowler's cap. "No one will be able to identify you looking like this." All for One grinned with unseeing eyes and put on a pair of dark blocked-out glasses. A blind man seeing stick held folded into segments in his one hand. "I have a driver coming around to take you to your appointment in Nagoya," Dr. Garaki said as he stood back to admire his work. "Do enjoy yourself while you're out, sir," Garaki chuckled. "I intend to, doctor," All for One said as he made his way out. It was time to see Feiheim. Shoto stood in the doorway with his luggage. He would be moving into the dorms today. Fuyumi and Natsuo were dropping him off. "I'm leaving for school," Shoto said to his father. Enji's attention drifted slowly towards him. He had been off since the Tuya incident. "Have fun at school," Enji said dully. It was like watching his mother fall apart all over again. Shoto grit his teeth and rushed out. He caught a glimpse of his reflection in the side of the car and flinched at the reminder. Shoving his bag into the back seat with a bit more force than necessary. Natsuo and Fuyumi shared a look. Fuyumi went to say something and Natsuo stopped her, shaking his head. All Might grinned happily as he walked around the school campus. He had spent 2 hours prior to school doing hero work, and had plans to spend another 6 after classes let out in the surrounding cities. He'd even gotten up the courage to face Night Eye again after so long. He had stared at All Might's unblemished chest with astounded eyes. Then he'd cursed it and lectured him for being an insensitive jerk and avoiding him. All Might had taken it all in with a happy smile, pretending not to notice the tears pricking the corner of his friend's eyes. "Good afternoon, All Might," a UA student said shyly as he passed. "And to you, fair student," All Might responded boisterously. After the summer camp incident, having All Might visibly walking the halls throughout the day and doing a round around the dorms had helped put the students at ease. His phone chimed and he pulled it out. Endeavor on extended leave. Read the Hero Network's notice. All Might frowned. "I hope he's all right," he muttered. A bird twittered past the window in the early afternoon sun. Chapter 34. And so it begins. "This way, sir," the nurse said, leading All for One to a designated exam room. He sat down pleasantly, thanking her kindly. "She'll be with you momentarily," All for One grinned. "I'm counting on it," he thought. "Thank you, young lady," he said. She smiled back at him and left. He got up and set Nightcrawler to the side. It wouldn't do for its quirk to be interfered with. Just as he sat back down, Kurosaki Orihime, or Feiheim, entered with a soft knock. She was wearing a dainty summer dress, not that All for One could see it. "Good afternoon," she said chipperly as her quirk bloomed into being like a comet. The dome formed above his head and he felt himself rapidly heal just as Miss Toga's quirk failed and sloshed away in a viscous puddle on the floor. The blind man's glasses and bowler's cap did well to hide his visage for the few moments it took for the top of his head to be healed. Feiheim's surprise lasted for a beat. "Oh my. Are you all right?" she asked with a worried frown. He was bald, but he could feel a prickle where the roots of his hair rubbed against the bowler's cap. His red eyes gleamed behind dark shades and he smiled with whole cheeks. "Never better, sorry for making a mess on your floor," he said with a chuckle. She laughed back happily as the healing of his arm paused for a beat before also being made whole. Once he was finished and the dome was recalled, he stood up and extended his hand, pulling the glasses from his face. "I'm honored to have the first thing I've seen in years be such a beautiful young lady," he said smoothly as she moved to shake his hand. She laughed. "I'm happy to help." A hole formed on his palm and he twisted her hand to kiss the back of it smoothly with a gentlemanly bow, his head blocking the light of his quirk. Tugata was practically vibrating in place with his excitement. The rest of the Year 3 students taking the elective class were around him, giving him odd side eyes. Nothing new there. They were all in the Coma gym, a large gymnasium built especially for Coma-man's classes. There were rumors that Cementos exhausted his quirk to make it, and looking around at the sheer-sized Tugata wouldn't be surprised if it were true. "Good morning, class," Ichigo said. He looked dead on his feet. "Good morning, Mr. Kurosaki," they chorused back. "Today you'll be starting the exciting journey of discovering your Riryoku, or spiritual power. Some of you will get it faster than others. It's not a competition and you won't be graded," some students mumbled to their friends at that. "But this class will be useless to you if you never get this part down," Ichigo said with a shrug. "For now, I want each of you to either sit over," Ichigo pointed to an area decorated in bean-bag chairs, pillows, and couches, "there to meditate until you notice the Riryoku within you," or, Ichigo pointed to a large bare area beside another area with exercise equipment. "Go exhaust your quirk over there and then go to sit and meditate on your Riryoku." The students mumbled again and a few gave each other shrugs. "It'll make it easier to notice your Riryoku. Your Riryoku is what you use to engage your quirk. If you are self-aware enough to notice that spark of energy as you engage your quirk, without becoming reishi blind by your quirk, you can skip that step and move forward," a student raised his hand. Ichigo pointed to them with a nod. "What if we have a mutation type?" the student with a mutation quirk asked. Ichigo scratched his cheek, then pointed back to the far end of the gym. "For now try to meditate. Next class I'll be down there and raising my own Ryotsu until you're crushed by it. When you crawl your way out of the field, your own Ryotsu will be denser and harder not to notice. Tugata, you've already got most of this down. I want you to master that gentle fist style before you try the reishi field." Ichigo singled him out and Tugata saluted earnestly. "Yes, sir." Ichigo's thumb pointed off to the side behind him where several tall shelves of clear silicone dummies with skeletons and pockets of different colored dye where organs would be lined in neat rows. "Practice with those. Coma card if you get one with only cracked bones and no busted organs," Ichigo said with a neutral scowl. "Coma card?" Tugata asked with a questioning lilt to his head. Ichigo waved a stack of cards in one hand. "None of you will be graded. Instead, I'll be keeping track of your personal progress. When you make progress, you get a Coma card. The amount of progress you make will determine the cash value of the card. You can exchange these at the office for cash or gift cards. Check out the gift cards, because sometimes they go on sale. We order them from a website." Excited murmurs washed over the students. "You're bribing us to do well?" Tamaki asked dully, genuinely surprised. "Yes, absolutely. I don't do grading," Ichigo said flatly. "It's in my contract." "Did you say crushed?" the earlier student asked, his face a bit paler than earlier. "Oh, yeah. Teach is a super intense trainer," Tugata said cheerfully with a laugh. Ichigo nodded. "You'll be crushed, but don't worry," Ichigo covered his mouth with a yawn. "You'll get used to it." The student gulped with wide eyes. Ichigo threw a plush rabbit at him, knocking him down with an "uieu." No getting discouraged in this class, it negatively affects your progress, he said with a hand on his hip and another plush in hand. Your Riryoku is intrinsically tied to your mood on any given day. Coming to class positive is coming to class prepared. The student sat up with the rabbit in hand. Did you just? He looked down at the plush toy. What the hell, man? Ichigo grinned. Alright. Get to your stations. A large portion of the class went to go exhaust their quirks while mutation types went to the meditation zone. Tugata hopped over to the dummies and began setting them up. Ichigo joined the students in the meditation zone and started walking them through the first steps. Class ended with a group of grumpy and exhausted teenagers. Ichigo pointed a remote at the exit and hit a button. A very expensive automatic espresso machine popped out of the wall beside the door. Coffee will be available at the end of class, Ichigo said, and students perked up and congregated over there. When they left and Ichigo got the area picked up, he grabbed his own coffee and relaxed on a beanbag with a laptop. He had Hero Agency paperwork to finish. He took a long drag of his coffee. His early morning appointments with Recovery Girl always left him dragging for the rest of the day. So, what did you think? Tugata asked as the big three walked down the hallway together. I dunno, Mirio, it was kinda weird. The coffee was great though. Nijire said with a finger to her bottom lip. Tugata laughed. That's just cause you didn't get it this class, but once you do, you'll see. It's crazy powerful, like having an extra quirk. Tugata gave a thumbs up and a wink. Quote dot. 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 It kinda was, I guess, Tamaki said with hunched shoulders. I wish he'd stop with the plushies though, Tugata laughed. He got you a couple of times, didn't he? Nijire asked. 4. I couldn't dodge a single one, Tamaki grumbled. Tugata bit his lips and averted his eyes with shaking shoulders. It's not funny, Tamaki grumped. Tugata put a fist to his mouth. No, of course not, PFFT. He looked out the window as he said so. Tamaki gave him a narrow-eyed glare. He said there's no grades, but he still gave me homework, Tamaki said with slouched shoulders. Tugata slung an arm around his shoulder. That's cause you got it so fast. Keep up the meditation exercises and you'll be able to start on the really fun stuff. Tugata pumped a fist as he said so. I don't think I'll be able to catch up to you, Tamaki said blandly. It's not a competition. Tugata said with a thumbs up, you'll probably be able to do things I can't anyway, he said thoughtfully. What do you mean? Nijire asked. Tugata shrugged. Something Teach said to me a while back. That the nature of your quirk relates to the nature of your Riryoku and how it will behave. I permeate my own body, so he has me focus on reinforcing myself with Riryoku. But he also turned a rock into cold magma and said that he convinced the reishi particles that they were in a fluid state with his own. He also told me that I probably wouldn't be able to do that. Tugata tapped his chin. I wonder if he'll have students do different things depending on their quirk, he said thoughtfully. Wait, Nijire said as she stood in front of him and waved her arms to stop him. Just what is Mr. Kurisaki's quirk? She asked, putting her hands on her hips. Ichigo walked out of the teacher's lounge and stood behind her. My quirk is great timing, Ichigo said from behind her. Nijire squealed with a hand over her heart. Mirio, Ichigo said as he handed a large stack of paperwork in an envelope to Tugata. Your commission recognition for your service during work study. Ichigo covered a yawn with his hand once Tugata took it. Tugata opened it up and pulled out one of the many sheets within. It was several checks taped to a piece of paper. His eyes bugged out a bit and his head whipped up, but Ichigo was already gone. Tamaki looked over his shoulder. "That's a lot of zeros," he said with raised brows. "Yeah, Teach took me to all the hot zones in Hosu and the surrounding cities for patrols," Tugata said absently as he tried to sense Ichigo. He turned his head and looked out the window. Ichigo was down in the grass looking up at him. He grinned and gave Tugata a thumbs up when he looked down at him. "How'd he get all the way down there?" Nijire asked as she waved down at him. Tugata tucked the paper back into the fat envelope and closed the flap. "With skill," Tugata said with a wink and a grin. "Just how many villains did you apprehend?" Tamaki asked. Tugata bit his hand on his chin in a thinking man pose. "Like, around 12 on average?" he said, making a so gesture with his hand. "The most arrests we did on any given night was 30, and the fewest was 2. Most of what we did was deterrent work though. You know, jump scares and stuff." Tamaki and Nijire looked at him with wide eyes. Present Mike also had his head peeking through the doorframe of the teacher's lounge with wide eyes. "What?" Tugata asked. "Is that weird?" "I meant total," Tamaki trailed off. I have no idea," Tugata said with his hands on his hips and a smile. Chapter 35. Quirkless. Nothing happened. Nothing happened. Not even a refusal or rebuttal like with One for All. Nothing happened. Because there was nothing there. All for One gave his pleasant goodbyes, called the little Nomu to him, and was on his way in short order. He went home, joints creaking with how hard his fists were clenched as he watched the world pass by the car window. Nothing happened. He entered the area Garaki was working, sat down in a lounge area off to the side, ripped off his damn bow tie and smashed it into the table before him over and over until there was nothing left but rubble and splintering material. "I take it things didn't go to plan," Dr. Garaki muttered. Quirkless, All for One hissed. "Beg pardon?" Garaki said as he stopped what he was doing and turned around. "Power that dances with healing light. I could feel its power wash over me," he said feverishly, "but there's no quirk." He ran a hand over his rough head, the strands now prickling, similar to a 5 o'clock shadow. "How is that possible?" Dr. Garaki asked with wide eyes. All for One took a steadying breath and lounged back on the exhale with his hands steepled before him. "I don't know," he muttered as he flashed through quirks between his palms. "Alter our plans for double the high-end production." "I don't like things I can't predict," he muttered darkly. "Double? Question mark. Garaki sputtered. All for One grinned winningly at him. "Come now, old friend. Obviously I'll be assisting you." His tone was cloying. Garaki hesitated and a considering look passed his face. "That would speed things up," Garaki muttered as he brought a small Nomu over to All for One, setting it down beside him as though it were worth its weight in gold. "Your super regeneration quirk, master." All for One smiled as he held a palm over the Nomu and the quirk was sucked up with little fanfare. The Nomu died immediately after, and he clenched and unclenched his head as he admired the new quirk under his skin. "What an exceptional power," he said admiringly. "Much better when you're whole to enjoy it." Garaki went back to working. All for One pushed a button for a calm. Kurogiri, he placed his chin in a palm with narrow slits for eyes. A smile splitting his face. "Prepare rooms for Tamura and his little friends." "Yes, master," Kurogiri replied. "It's time to stir things up a bit, don't you think, doctor?" Quote. Ichigo lay in bed with Orihime that night. Kon was staying in his dorm on campus and they had the house to themselves now. "How was work today?" Ichigo asked as they cuddled comfortably in uninterrupted silence. "I melted a man," Orihime said. "Huh?" Ichigo's head shot up. "But he got better, so it's fine," Orihime said with a yawn. "Did you... hit him with Tsubaki first?" Ichigo wondered, baffled. "No," Orihime said as she kissed his neck. "Weird," Ichigo mumbled. Orihime said as she moved to his shoulder. Ichigo sighed blissfully as he rolled over on top of her. The crickets and the frogs sung their songs outside the window. They spent the night enjoying their solitude. "Can I help you?" Ichigo asked Aizawa and Vlad King as they stood there with his first-year class. Surprisingly, all of the Hero Course students elected to join plus one kid from the General Studies for the first years. It was easily his biggest class. Aizawa gave him a dead-eye stare. "Some students are worried that you'll crush them," he said blandly. Ichigo threw back his head and laughed. Today was not a recovery girl appointment day. "Word got around about the third years, huh?" Ichigo asked as he pointed to the tail kid. "You, meditation center," he pointed to the rest. "All of you go exhaust your quirks. I want arms shaking and chests heaving. You should barely be able to muster the strength to use your quirk by the time you're done," Ichigo said as he pointed to the large quirk use zone. "They have heroics after this," Aizawa pointed out, referring to Class A. "Find the spark that lights your quirk. Eventually I'll get you using that spark without engaging your quirk. But for now, baby steps. Exhaust your quirk so you can't use it anymore. Then try to use it. Notice the feeling of how you engage your Riryoku to use your quirk. Memorize that feeling so that you don't have to do this part again. Simple, but a pain in the ass. Kazui, you have Hado training." Ichigo pointed a thumb behind himself to some dummies. "Yes, sir," Kazui said as he jogged over there. "I'm not joining the others because it's not possible to exhaust my quirk," Ojiro said with a frown. "Yup. You can meditate on your Riryoku like the rest of the class will be doing once they finish. Or you can go to the crushing zone and fight your way out of my Ryotsu field." Ryotsu is the physical force a person's Riryoku makes when released. Being subjected to an overwhelmingly powerful Ryotsu will jumpstart your Riryoku into adapting for the sake of survival and give you an easier time of finding it, Ichigo said as he pointed with his thumb to the crushing zone. "But you'll have a killer headache for the next day and a half or so." "I'll do that," Ojiro said with a firm nod as he made his way over. A boy with purple hair raised his hand. Ichigo nodded at him. "Can anyone go to the crush zone?" Shinso asked. "Yes," Ichigo said. Shinso nodded and followed Ojiro. The other students went over to start exhausting their quirks. Ichigo went over to Kazui first, handing him an index card and moving to demonstrate the spell for him. "This is a spell your grandfather's clan was well versed in." Ichigo got into position. "Sprinkled on the bones of the beast. Sharp tower, red crystal, steel ring. Move and become the wind, stop and become the calm. The sound of warring spears fills the empty castle." Riryoku swirled around his palm and formed a yellow orb. Hado number 63. Raikoho. The attack shot off to the far end of the building like a giant lightning strike, ending in a devastating explosion that set off Ichigo's Kido barrier, placed for this very reason, and shook the walls. Ichigo relaxed his stance and looked down at his wide-eyed son. Do that, just less big, he said, walking off to the crush zone. Kazui whipped his head around to face Midoriya and pointed to the flashcard, and then the small mushroom cloud dissipating in the distance as though to say, "See what I had to deal with?" Midoriya gave him a helpful, hopeless-looking thumbs up with a sort of grimace grin. Like he was trying to be encouraging but wasn't sure how to go about it. "Alright you two," Ichigo said as he approached the wide-eyed duo. He grabbed 2 thin sponge mats and tossed them on the ground. "Stand over those." Ojiro and Shinso gave each other a look before stepping forward and bracing themselves. They were not prepared for the sky to fall and crush them into the mats. "I guess. ... It's called the ... crushing zone ... for a reason." Ojiro ground out as he tried to lift his arms to brace against the ground. Quote ... Yeah, Shinso said as his arms shook while he struggled to do the same. Khan hummed happily as he decorated Ichigo's, or rather his, dorm to his little heart's content. It was nice to have his own space, and be around people who appreciated him. He was officially Ichigo's teacher's aide, but Ichigo wouldn't need him until after the kids got in touch with their Ryoryoku. In the meantime, Khan got to relax and make friends with the staff. "Midnight's my favorite," Khan thought dreamily with a happy smile. Chapter 36. Funny Bones. Licensing exam? Ichigo asked as he ate lunch with Kazui at his friend's table. Midoriya, Uraraka, Iida, Tsuyu, Todoroki, and Tokiyami sat around a circular table with his son. Kazui nodded. "Yeah, it's held every June and September in 3 locations. Mr. Aizawa is taking us in 2 days," Kazui said. "Ah, I should send Khan to that, 1 sec," Ichigo said as he grabbed a glowing marble out of his pocket and chucked it out the open window in the cafeteria. "I'll be sure to cut back on the next class then. We'll do something fun." The other students perked up. "Why?" Kazui said with a fed-up scowl. Quote ... So that you're not exhausted? Ichigo gave him an odd look. "No, the marble," Kazui said, unimpressed. "What marble?" Ichigo asked with wide, innocent eyes. Kazui's arm shot out to point at the open window with the same irritated kid face he'd made when he was 4. "Ryotsu sensing training," Ichigo said with an amused smile. "Some of my students are struggling with sensing Ryotsu. And it takes more than a class block every so often to get it down during the initial stages. It gets easier with time." "So you pelt them with marbles, Ribbit?" Tsuyu asked. "Reishi pearls. Each one has a set intensity and frequency to make them really hard to ignore, even for novice sensors." Ichigo took a bite of his lunch. "So they have continuous training throughout the day to cover for their weaknesses," Iida said with a chop. Ichigo swallowed. "Exactly, also they hurt when they nail you in the elbow. So extra motivation. Irritation is often one of the best tools for learning new skills," Ichigo said, taking another bite. Quote ... You're throwing marbles at people's funny bones in the name of education," Kazui said, deadpan. "Reishi pearls, Kazui. I'll probably end up with a couple students who can dodge bullets," Ichigo said thoughtfully, tapping his chin with his chopsticks. Iida shot his hand up in the air. Tokiyami's feathers bristled with surprise beside him. "Please train me in the same manner, sir. I wish to gain that kind of speed," Iida said seriously. Todoroki gave Iida a strange look as he ate his soba quietly. Quote ... After you pass your license exam. Ichigo took a long sip of his coffee. I will endeavor to do so promptly. Iida said earnestly. Gah! Ectoplasm shouted as his elbow flared with pain. Why? He whipped around, trying to find Coma-man, and glared at the little marble rolling around on the floor when he was unable to. Ectoplasm grumbled as he picked it up. It felt warm in his hand. His elbow smarted and he rubbed it. TCH, he said, training my ass. He grumbled under his breath as he made his way down the hall to lunch. Nedzu sat in his office, laughing and cackling with delight, beside the monitors for the school security camera feed. Coma-man was turning out to be an absolute gem. Nedzu had a few reishi pearls tucked away around the room, and was working his way through differentiating between the different types as he performed his administrative duties. Provisional licensing exam? Khan asked with a thoughtful paw tapping his chin. Ichigo sat across from him with his arms crossed at the wrist, dangling down between his knees. Yeah, it's a lot of fun, and you even get to do spy stuff. Khan perked up at that, then looked over at the pile of work the HPSC had given Ichigo that sat on the end of the coffee table between them. Will I have to do all that? Khan asked with narrowed eyes as he pointed to the pile. Ichigo shrugged. No idea, but you'll be legally protected if you're ever in a situation where you need to protect yourself, Ichigo reasoned. I can ask Hawks when I see him tonight if you'd like. Khan rubbed his chin, then nodded. Please do, I'll think about it. Great, cuz it's in 2 days, Ichigo smiled. What? Question mark. Why would you wait until now to tell me? Khan perked up with alarm. Provisional exam? Hawks asked as he flew beside Ichigo. Would someone need a high school diploma or other documented education in this world to get one? Ichigo asked as pushed off a reishi platform to keep his momentum through the air. Hawks scratched his cheek. I mean, students get theirs before they graduate all the time, so no. But it's not as permissive as a pro license, so they wouldn't be able to open an agency or operate independently. Hawks flapped his wings again. That's actually perfect, he's a pacifist, so he's not out and about looking for trouble or anything. It just seems to find him, Ichigo said with a worried frown. The plush guy, right? Hawks asked. Yeah, Ichigo muttered. A flash of gunfire flickered in the street below. On it, Ichigo flickered out of existence. Hawks dived to join him on the street below. It turned out to be a villain turf war, not pretty. Trouble just seems to find him, huh? Hawks thought as he gazed at the bound foes around the street after the battle was over. Not much of a battle, to be honest, everything was over pretty fast. There's some big names here. Hawks looked over at a villain coated in thick metal plates, and another with needle-like protrusions leaking a toxic-smelling fluid. They were a rank, easy. His eyes followed Coma-man as he chatted with a haggard-looking police officer while wearing a friendly smile. The pair of heroes were a bit out of their usual territory since it had been so quiet in and around Hosu that night. This town didn't see a lot of hero traffic, too small. The officer looked ready to break down from his relief. Poor guy. Just throw them back if you're that bent up about it, Ichigo said. That's not the point. I don't appreciate being ambushed by coworkers on my way to lunch, Ectoplasm said seriously. That's great, did you figure it out? Ichigo grinned. Quote dot. 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 No, Ectoplasm's shoulders slumped. Sucks to suck, Ichigo quipped back. Hey, Ichigo? Kan asked as he found him that morning at the very excellent coffee machine Principal Nedzu had paid for as part of Coma-man's contract in the Coma gym, alongside some of the other staff. Yeah? Ichigo asked as he pulled away from his conversation with ectoplasm. Can you help me prepare for the provisional exam? Kan asked. The one tomorrow? Present Mike asked. Kan nodded. Sure, Kan. I'll cancel with Hawks tonight, Ichigo said as he pulled out his phone and sent a message. Do you go out every night? Present Mike asked and took a sip of coffee. Ichigo shrugged. Technically? I've been spreading my senses out citywide each night, so my record will show every night, but I only do a big patrol 4 times a week. Ichigo shrugged. Citywide? Present Mike's tone seemed a tad higher. Yeah, I'm not getting my ass out of bed unless someone's about to get shot, Ichigo said bluntly. He's got a really hot wife, Kan stage whispered. Shut it, you, Ichigo warned. Kan mimed zipping his mouth shut. Ichigo caught a reishi pearl that was launched at him from behind with a grin. He flicked his wrist and the pearl disappeared. It ricocheted off of a wall with a tack. Gah. Ectoplasm rubbed his elbow and glared at Ichigo. Ichigo grinned back. You could always go to the crush zone if you're sick of this, Ichigo said with a shrug. Ectoplasm gave him a deadpan stare. He hates headaches, Present Mike stage whispered. Shut it you, Ectoplasm said as he sulked off with his coffee. Chapter 37. Friendship and Other Things. This is Kan, he'll be joining you, Aizawa said as he motioned towards the little plush lion standing before the group of students with his arms crossed and a cocky grin. Bakugo's head whipped around to Kazui, who pointedly did not meet his eyes and whistled while pretending not to notice. Don't ignore me, you idiot. Bakugo thought with a fierce scowl as he clenched his fist. Nice to meet you, Kan. Kirishima said with a friendly grin. I've never met someone with a plush toy quirk before, I'm Kirishima. Quote. Will you be joining us in taking your provisional exam? Tokiyami asked calmly with his arms crossed and his beak pointed down so as to not block his vision of Kan. Kan flashed a peace sign. Sure am. Kan said confidently. You can do introductions on the bus. Let's get going, Aizawa said as he ushered the class onward. I have a seating chart here. Iida said as he pulled out a piece of paper and light reflected off of his glasses. Some students groaned. Others congregated to get a look before getting onto the bus. Apologies, Kan, but I didn't account for your participation, Iida chopped the air with a frown. It's fine, Kan waved it off, I'll just sit wherever. Kan's presence on the bus turned out to be a good distraction from the students' nervousness. Are you that damn toy Kurosaki was bringing around with him everywhere? Bakugo demanded. I did not bring him around everywhere. Kazui shouted, I told you, he was following me. Quote. Well, excuse me, for not believing in haunted dolls. Bakugo and Kazui's faces were centimeters apart as they shouted at each other. Who decided putting them together was a good idea? Zero asked with a grimace as he rubbed a pinky in his ear. I felt it was prudent as they would only shout across the bus if separated, Iida said as he adjusted his glasses. That's fair, Ribbit, Tsuyu said as she watched the two quietly. Aizawa sighed forlornly as he stared out the window of the bus. Kan snickered. It's strange, Ojiro said as he watched the two, Kurosaki's so calm with everyone else. Jiro shrugged in response. Kan sat limply on Kazui's shoulder. leaned against the side of his head when they exited the bus. Aizawa gave the students a pep talk about eggs and chickens. Kon didn't really get it, but to each their own. The kids seemed inspired enough. Plus ultra. The class chorused, and a boy from another school with hats joined in with more enthusiasm than that pink-haired lieutenant when sweets were mentioned. You know, it's pretty rude to barge in on someone else's huddle like that, Inasa, another student from the enthusiastic boys' school said. What? Pardon me. I am. Dot. So. Dot. Dot. Very. Dot. Dot. Extremely. Dot. Dot. Sorry. Inasa shouted as he smashed his head into the concrete with a sharp grin. Kon watched with dawning horror. Inasa's expression never changed from an aggressive smile that gave Kon the willies. That must be what the wardens of hell in this world look like, Kon thought unkindly. All exposed teeth and overwhelming enthusiasm seemed to be a running theme here. Also, self-injury for stupid reasons. What is wrong with these kids? I don't have any nerve endings and even I know that hurts. Single quote. Kon watched the unfolding chaos with exasperation and decided it was best to just pretend to be a plush toy and not deal with it once Captain Enthusiasm, Inasa's head started bleeding. He remained limp on Kazui's shoulder, allowing his arms to dangle and flop. Aizawa warned his class that Inasa Yorashi had gained top scores for recommendation students, but turned down his acceptance to UA, and to be cautious. Some green-haired woman with a crush on Kazui's homeroom teacher showed up to harass Aizawa. Then her class came by to harass his students. You brought an emotional support stuffy? The black-haired one with the two-faced compliments said, surprised to see Kon on Kazui's shoulder. His face lit up with malicious amusement. That's so cute. Kazui was not impressed and did not respond. Instead, imitating his father's best, "What, are you still here?" Scowl. "Oi, buzz off." Bakugo shouted. Kazui stared at him wide-eyed as he watched Bakugo lay into the guy for being a two-faced creep. Does he? Dot. Dot. Think we're friends? Kazui thought as flashes of their past interactions went through his mind. Kazui's face fell flat with his realization. Bakugo's love language is insults and violence. Dot. Dot. This guy's so broken, he thought dully. Kon patted his shoulder reassuringly and Kazui wondered if the little plush man had a mind-reading quirk. Okay then, let's do this exam thing. I'm from Heroes Public Safety Commission, name's Mara. The blonde man's head drooped and shot back up. My circadian rhythm is so screwed up, ah man. Kon sat on Kazui's shoulder and gave the man a pitying look. He looked like Uraharu's sleep-deprived paper-pushing brother. I've been swamped lately and haven't gotten much rest. Mara teetered woozily where he leaned against the podium. We're too short-staffed, I'm so tired. Mara placed his head in his hand. With that confession, I'll now begin orientation. Uraharu's complain-wise sleep-deprived brother, Kon thought with exasperation. Kon listened with half an ear as Mara explained that there were too many heroes crowding the industry and incidents were being resolved in an absurdly fast amount of time. Therefore they would be testing them on speed and only the first 300 examinees to succeed would pass. Kon yawned. The students around him murmured worriedly. There are over 1,500 people taking this test. Yayorozu said, I thought they said that about half of us would be passing. This means, it's actually around 30% of us who will get a license, Suyu said worriedly. Man, I'm way more nervous now. Juru said as she tugged at her earjacks. Oh, and you have a 3-hour time limit, Mira said into the microphone as he pushed himself up off the podium. I suppose I should say something about luck. Mira looked at the room full of nervous examinees. So, anyway, here are the basic rules. He held an orange ball and a target in each hand. So. There could be less than 300 students to pass, Midoriya muttered. This is way more intense than we expected, he thought. The examinee will place 3 of these targets on his or her body. They can go anywhere you want so long as it's an exposed area. So no soles of the feet or armpits. Each of you will have 6 of these balls. The targets are programmed to light up whenever they've been touched by the balls. If all 3 targets light up, you're out. Myra's voice was a dull drawl as an instructional video played behind him with visual cues. Oh, and the person who lights up your 3rd target will get credit for your defeat. You get through this round by taking out 2 people. Got it? Good, Mira said. It was exactly as Ichigo had described the first round of his exam. Extreme superpowers dodgeball. Khan punched his paws together. Bring it on. Khan thought, excited. Chapter 38. The crushing of UA, Kazui's Zanpakuto revealed. Ichigo walked down the stairs towards the kitchen and past where Orihime sat watching TV on the couch. Guess what Kazui did last night? Ichigo asked as he started scrubbing dishes. Orihime hit mute. What? Her head peeked over the back of the couch. He unlocked Shikai, Ichigo said proudly. He did? Question mark. Orihime asked as she jumped up. Where is he? We should celebrate. She clapped her hands together. He's at that license exam with his class, Ichigo said as he finished up and loaded the dishwasher. Orihime joined him in the kitchen. Ichigo tilde? Orihime whined as she pulled on his elbow. This is Kazui's first battle with his Shikai, we had to go watch. Ichigo smiled at her. He made me swear we wouldn't, Ichigo said and Orihime pouted at him. Besides, he's a teenager now. Kazui doesn't appreciate his hovering. Ichigo shrugged. But. Orihime said with wide eyes, his first battle, Ichigo. And I won't get to see it, her bottom lip trembled. I'll ask them for a copy of the security footage. Ichigo was quick to offer, nervous in the face of Orihime's crocodile tears. She deflated with a pout. Did you really promise? She asked. I really did, Ichigo assured. Quote. Fine, Orihime huffed. The square room the 1540 examinees were standing in unfolded into the center of a large area. There were several zones, similar to the USJ but perhaps bigger, with a couple simulated cities and other various terrain ranging from natural to industrial. The whole thing was very dramatic. King Explosion Murder, Red Riot, and Chargebolt had all run off together, leaving the group behind. Shortly after, the remaining students of Class 1A were faced with a multi-school ambush, better known as the crushing of UA. If you like your students this year, you should have warned them, Ms. Joke said as she spoke with Aizawa up in the bleachers. We see it time and time again in this exam. Ua is immediately crushed. Down below in the arena, dozens of students were coming after, and targeting, Kazui's class. Balls in their multitudes shot towards them in waves. One for all. Full cowling. Deku thought as he ran forward with green electricity dancing along his limbs, shoot style. He kicked a ball and the force of the wind from his attack scattered a dozen balls back towards their assailants. Acid veil. Pinky yelled as she melted a group of a dozen balls. Dark shadow. Tsukuyomi cried as Dark Shadow swiped balls with its large hands. Uravati shot up into the air, dodging dozens of the orange projectiles herself, and Cellophane's tape whipped around through the air, catching many balls along its length. Heaven-piercing ice wall. Shoto performed his ultimate move to make a large barrier between his class and the other schools. A strong tremor, or earthquake, shook the ice and tore it down. Shoto's eyes widened, and the attacks continued. Creata surrounded herself, Invisible Girl, and Froppy with heavy riot shields. Ingenio, Ida's hero name now that his brother was healed, and Kazui dodged balls at high speeds like it was nothing. None of our attacks are landing. A blue student from Ketsubutsu wearing casual clothes with a puff jacket and a gold chain, hero named Mr. Smith, said as he hardened some balls between his hands. I guess we shouldn't be surprised. Ua won't go down without a fight. A boy with an exposed chest wearing a black armored bolero with matching harem pants along with green armor and gold accents, hero named Grand, said. He shook out his arms once he was able to move again after using his quirk to break down Shoto's ice wall. He was the student who Bakugo had chewed out for picking on Kazui for having Kon around. All done. Mr. Smith said as he tossed the orange rock-like balls down to Boomerang Man, a plain-looking student who wore a black outfit with a red scarf. Target, lock on. Boomerang Man said, doing an intricate dance with his arms, as the balls glowed with a purple hue in his hands. He threw them down into, and under, the ground. Boomerang, crescent moon trajectory, he intoned. I can sense it. Deku thought in wonder as he felt the quirked balls that had been shot underground shoot towards them. Not everyone had gotten Mr. Kurisaki's teachings yet, they were only in their first week of classes. But for the handful of students who had, the difference was staggering. Drown the world's sorrows. Kazui drew his Zanpakuto, Shigetsu. Two giant glimmering koi fish made of reishi water appeared. One gold and the other blue. Kazui wielded two Greek kopis blades, with open-mouthed koi as the handles that had their tails curved at the end to make a knuckle guard. An intricate vambrace adorned each of his arms. The blade in vambrace representing the golden koi was black with gold detail. The blade in vambrace corresponding to his blue koi was white with blue detail. Getsuga Tensho. Kazui shouted, holding his blades parallel to one another and swiping down to break apart the ground. The Ketsubutsu students dodged by jumping through the air, landing on jagged stone. Anima, they're headed for you. Deku shouted, referring to the rock-hard balls. The balls shot up towards the surface and Shoto burned them with his fire. How? Question mark. Boomerang Man wondered. Maximum force. Tremoring earth. Grand shouted and the earth began to rip apart. Kazui waved his arms and the koi snatched up his classmates and swam up into the air as the ground was torn up beneath them. The heads of his classmates breached the backs of his spirit koi with splashes and gasping exhales. He manipulated the waters of his Zanpakuto so that they were each expelled up out of the water and resting upon the spirits' backs with gentle indents in the scales to keep them securely in place. Earphone Jack, Uravati, Tsukuyomi, Ingenio, Pinky, Tailman, Anima, Creata, Sugarman, Cellophane, Invisible Girl, Tentacle, I Cannot Stop Twinkling, Froppy, Shoto, and Deku sat atop his fish with wide wondering eyes. When were you able to do this? Shoto asked as he traced his fingers along the solid transparent scales of Kazui's glimmering Zanpakuto with wonder. Since last night, Kazui grinned. Hey, I'm not complaining, Earphone Jack said as she eyed how high up they were. But is there a time limit on this? Quote. No idea. Kazui said chipperly. His classmates look collectively nervous now. Whenever I get tired, I suppose, he shrugged. Tsukuyomi's eyes were wide, feathers bristled. Quote. I would like to return to the ground now, please, Froppy said firmly. The other classmates agreed. Kazui had his spirit koi drift down some distance away from the multi-school ambush they had been trapped in earlier. Everyone hopped or slid off the backs of the large spirit koi, some with sighs of relief. On the ground they huddled up, Kazui's spirit koi dipping down into the ground with their heads poking out of the stone as though it were a pond. If we work together we should be able to get enough defeats for everyone to pass, Deku said as he tapped his chin, but we'll be easier to track. If we make 3 squads with complementing quirks we may have a better chance, Tsukuyomi said with dark shadow nodding from over his shoulder and eyeing Kazui's spirit koi warily. I agree, Krieta nodded, we should have a sensor in each group. And we should work out a place to rendezvous at the halfway mark so we can cover anyone who hasn't gotten their second defeat yet, Ingenio said. Hey, where's Kon? Invisible Girl asked. Kazui perked up and looked at his empty shoulder. Kurosaki, over there. Deku said as he pointed over to where Kon was running away in the distance towards one of the foe cities fast enough to leave a jet stream of dust behind him in the air. Wait, Kurosaki? Grand asked from atop a ridge, his eyes wide, as in Feihime. Kazui's expression turned dark as he whipped his head around to glare up as the boy in green and black. Shoto got into position beside him. Crap, they already found us, Tailman thought. His eyes strayed to the glowing giant fish heads peeking up from the ground, not that it was hard to track us. I swear, if you insult my mother, Kazui warned. Grand put his arms up in surrender with wide eyes. Whoa, you're Feiheim's son. Question mark. The blonde with the telescopic quirk said as she popped up. Can you yield too? Question mark. She asked excitedly. Not good, they already have us surrounded again, Deku thought as he regarded Kazui's spirit koi. It's good for avoiding big attacks, but it's super noticeable and attracts a lot of attention. Deku's senses weren't as good as Kazui's but he could tell there were numerous students surrounding them hidden by the jutting stone. Shoto glanced at Kazui, he looked calm and unbothered. A twist of Kazui's wrist and the golden koi was swirling towards the opposing students. Yes, did someone get hurt? Kazui asked, face serious. Grand gave him a calculating look. Interesting strategy to assist your opponents, Grand said as he stood with one knee up and his padded elbow resting upon it. Tests can be retaken, people are more important, Kazui said firmly, unwavering in his belief. A flash of some emotion crossed Grand's eyes and he motioned with one hand, flicking his wrist forward. A couple students carried someone with a compound fracture in their shin forward. He limped with each arm slung over someone's shoulder and tremors racking his frame, sweat on his brow. Kazui wasted no time and the golden spirit koi ate the student, glowed a more brilliant golden color, and spat him out whole and undamaged. The student tested his leg and jumped a couple times, giving the thumbs up when he verified that he was fine. Grand gave him a nod and swung his arm in the air to rally his group. We're leaving, Grand said, leading the 8 Ketsubutsu students out of the area. There were still some opportunistic students waiting in the winds though. Grand paused to look over his shoulder at the UA group. There aren't enough quality healers in the field, so you better get your license today, Kurosaki. Kazui nodded with a serious scowl, and the group left. I'm glad that's over, Froppy said. It's not over, Deku said firmly as a group of 30 students shot out and rushed them. Shoto stomped and a wall of ice formed between them and the oncoming group. 17 against 30's not great odds, Deku said as he regarded his classmates, but we can win. His classmates nodded, rallying at Deku's confident declaration. Heck yeah. Pinky said with a little hop. But people are more important. Kazui's words rung out in Shoto's head. People. Are more important than winning, Shoto thought as he regarded Kazui's strong back that was illuminated by his glowing spirit koi. He felt the words soothe something in him, as though they were a balm. Come on. There should have been one or two who've passed by now. Mara's voice sounded over the loudspeaker with a yawn thrown in. Stop biding your time and get this over with. Khan cackled like a madman as he zipped to and fro at 100 meters per 3 8/10 seconds with a ball in his hand, hitting students' targets with glee, moving too fast for any of them to get a good look at him as he shot through the faux city streets with a dust cloud behind him. He'd gotten 10 down already, should he try for more? Hey, no fair. A student called as she placed her hands on her hips. She was dressed as a sort of ninja? You already got enough to pass, she said as she pointed a thumb at the straight line of students with glowing targets. Khan cackled and ducked around a corner, dust still forming in a stream behind him, obscuring him from view. What a weirdo, she put her hands on her hips. Another girl in a Western cowgirl-themed costume walked over. Hey, what school's he from? Cowgirl asked. Ninja girl shrugged. Dunno, didn't get a good look at, I am. The wind started to pick up, sucking up the students in the street's balls into the air. A guy from Shiketsu High? Question mark. Someone asked as they stared up at the whirlwind of orange balls forming above the hand of a guy standing atop a building. Why are only the balls being sucked up? Question mark. Another shouted over the sound of the winds. I believe it's very important for heroes to have passion. Gale Force said as he stood atop a building looking down on the rest of the examinees below on the streets with an enthusiastic grin. And all of you are fighting with it. Thank you. An uncommanded gust of wind blew past him, and the target on his shoulder lit up. Gale Force's attention shot to where a plush doll lay on the roof with an orange ball in its mouth, as though it had been thrown. A quirk that manipulates plush animals? Gale Force wondered as he looked around, defenses up, or cloth manipulation. Another gust not within his direct control. He tried to dodge, and another of his targets was lit up. He abandoned the balls, allowing them to fall down as he focused his quirk to shoot himself up into the air. His grin never left his face as he stared at the plush toy laying limply down below on the roof. Where are you? His eyes scanned the area for the possible culprit. It doesn't matter, I know what you'll attack with. Gale Force yelled passionately as he wrapped the plush toy in winds and brought it towards him, catching the little lion in one hand. As his hand closed around the waist of the plush, and his fingers brushed the metal plate of a target placed upon its back, he knew he had miscalculated. His eyes widened with surprise. The little lion plush smirked at him and ballooned up into an overly large muscled behemoth easily twice Gale Force's size. Surprise! Khan cheered as he reared his arm back and punched Gale Force away, a great distance, with an enhanced strike. Gale Force landed roughly, using his quirk to soften his fall and prevent injury. He still bounced along the ground from the force of the attack a couple of times, before flipping and landing with a skid onto his feet with an intense grin, his fingers digging into the soil to slow his momentum. Khan fell through the air and twisted to land in a dramatic crouching position with one arm out and the other braced against the ground. "Hasta la vista, baby," Khan said with a gleam in his eye. To the examinee that just took out 10 people, "Please make your way to the exit in a timely manner." Myra's voice drawled over the intercom. "We should be seeing more people pass from here on out, that's nice." Unfortunately, this part is over. I hope you enjoyed it. My apologies for all those quotes. Please have a good morning, afternoon, evening or night. See you next time, faves.